Ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Dan, the voice behind that Kaito Dan, and welcome to my review for RWBY Volume 8, Episode 12, Creation. But before we begin, as always, please make sure you're watching this episode first on roosterteeth.com to support the show and avoid spoilers. Also, a quick bit of news, if you haven't heard yet, the 5th entry in the manga anthology series, this time focused on our favourite B team, Team Juniper, titled Shine, has finally gotten its cover and release date, with it dropping on the 20th of July. Beyond that, let's dive into the fandom spotlight, with many of the last episode's personal moments being discussed amongst you all. Like Half the Battle, who analysed Vine's conflicting emotions as his team was falling apart around him very well, while Type Onyx echoed my sentiments of Emerald possibly becoming Oscar's Glinda should he become the headmaster, while also praising their dynamic. And finally, Rosalie G called Risk one of their favourite episodes in general, even noting their RWBY bingo card success too. So while the action side of things took a brief pause last episode, it certainly didn't lead to a lack of high emotion, as we got offered a smorgasbord of deeply personal, heartfelt interactions, as well as a few certain faces cementing their turns that should help the heroes in their most dire race against the clock yet. Now, as we enter the volume's closing act, was it able to create more moments of gold once the fist started flying again? Or did the final portion fumble right out of the gate? Let's find out. We open up with some of our heroes flying over to the academy after nabbing an airship. And boy, Atlas is sure lucky they don't have to worry about cleaning up grim whale blubber, even if it is taking a while for old Monster to dissolve. Of course, there's actual bigger fish to fry right now, with the folks in Mantle fearing the worst about the bomb threat. Though perhaps they have reason for hope, as it seems the bomb transfer efforts have hit a bit of a snag. Meanwhile, Ironwood is preparing for Penny's supposed surrendering, and we see that the general isn't willing to take any chances of a fight happening, his welcome wagon consisting of himself, the Aesops, and I guess we can call this the fabled gun that many of the fandom have joked about being a thing for years. We can even see that Ironwood's due process revolvers act as the laser cannon's handles. And yet, while this makes it plain that Ironwood is willing to do anything to make sure things go according to plan, we do see some more conflicting emotions from his elites. While Harriet's as aggressively stern and focused on her orders as per usual of late, Vine openly acknowledges that he's thinking about everything that's led up to this moment, the exhausted tone in his voice, and the forlorn look on Elm's face, putting it plainly that there's regret within them both. But after Marrow just barely dodged the bullet last time, they likely see no other course of action but to press on, in spite of their shaken resolves. They won't be around for long though, as Ironwood gets informed that Crow and Robin are the ones messing around in the hangar, prompting the Aesops to go after them, Harriet especially looking forward to dishing out some rough justice on the two jailbirds. Pretty much just sums up the speedster right there, wanting to fight her way through anyone whose words may cause her to stop and think about the rights and wrongs of her actions. Can't be nothing but on the winning side of an issue, huh? As for who will stay and guard the general, that falls onto the returning Winter, surprisingly having not ran away with Marrow as most of us would have believed. Instead, she's here by the general's side once again, though this moment alone does give her perhaps one last chance to try and talk James out of his destructive path, only for the general to swiftly cut off any further efforts to stop him. We'll come back to this in a bit, as we then see Penny arrive on her own, even allowing to be cuffed without any fuss, much to Ironwood's surprise. Guess that laser combo was wasted in the end. Also, do we have a name for it yet? How about Aggressive Negotiation, or The Gavel, or Lawmaker as a spin on that Judge Dredd gun? And now I want to hear Ironwood shout, "I am the law!" Anyway, Ironwood eases up for once, trying to comfort Penny for doing the right thing, only for Penny's response to sound very different. Surprise! It's actually Emerald, with Juniper 2.0 in tow. Many of us speculated that Emerald would act as a decoy, but the delivery of this fake out is really damn cool regardless, with how I believe it's Taylor who changes up her Penny voice to sound closer to Emerald, or maybe it's vice versa, it's actually kinda hard to tell. Either way, it's still a neat detail to the tease of the fake out before it's sprung, as is hearing Emerald jokingly spin Ironwood's comment of doing the right thing as a bit of an admittance that it does feel weird to be doing so when for so long all Emerald's done in the past is doing bad things. Nice little bit of sass before she kicks the other's ass, or I guess in this case, kicks some chin. This awesome trickery then helps literally kick off the brawl, with Emerald vanishing as well alongside Ironwood's weapons, leaving him to fend off the incoming attacks with just his fists. And boy is this battle fast-paced as all hell. Rightfully so too when you think about what's at stake should the kids fail. The moment that Ironwood gets a chance to do so, he will order the bomb to be dropped already, or get backup to arrive and help him out. So no shocker then to see them all barrage the general with wave after wave of attacks, using the numbers game to their advantage. As this is going on, we also see Crow and Robin taking it to the drones at the hangar, and I'm gonna point out the slick transition from this back to the fight outside. We go from Crow's swing leading down towards the center of the screen, which follows the same attack motion of Jean's next attack, with him then doubling back to block Ironwood's punch, which leads us smoothly into Oscar then coming in from the right hand side. Stuff like that really does help the flow of sequences keep the viewer's immersion locked in without losing sight of what's going on, which is especially handy for these super fast sequences, so top stuff there on the part of the animators and directing. There's also some nice interplay with Jean, Oscar and Ren using their speed and defensive skills very well to pressure James hard early on, though the general does get some good hits in to show that he is still a threat that won't go down without a fight. Thankfully, the boys are joined up by Nora as well as Winter, who reveals herself to be working alongside the heroes as she helps Nora charge up a super smash, much to Ironwood's angered surprise. This makes that earlier discussion between the two and Winter's brief pause before accepting Ironwood's choice have even more of an emotional impact than first believed, as it sort of acts like a silent, tragic acceptance from Winter that the man she owed so much to, the person who helped give her a path that she's made her own since leaving her family, has now gone too far for even her to follow, and the pain of that truth is only matched by the sadness that now the only way to stop Ironwood is to fight him. Effective, subtle storytelling, right there, without having to hear Winter openly verbalize her pain. She's also not the only Atlas elite switching sides, as we also see Marrow aiding Crow and Robin, freezing his former cohorts in place while the other two finish wrecking shop. And yeah, it is kinda satisfying to see Harriet, even in a frozen state, be no doubt pissed she's punked out again, this time by Marrow of all people. Let's also quickly talk about Nora and the song that's playing over this fight, which thanks to the fine folks over at Sirs and Madams, we have some lyrics for, and its name, Be Strong and Hit Stuff. An obvious callback to Nora and her personal battle for self-identity. The lyrics matching as well her previously explored mental woes about feeling like her self-worth isn't as whole as she'd like it to be. But the song could also tie to Emerald, with bits about redemption and mistakes in the past being mentioned, possibly making this a song akin to Brand New Day from the last volume in fitting more than one character arc. Still though, it's nice to have a Nora-related song that's not focused on just her romantic feelings, and it's also a lively enough tune to fit the theme and the fight itself. Also, Ironwood is super lucky that he's got such a thick skull, cause that shot looked nasty as all hell. But even still, Ironwood won't fall down, proving himself to be a hell of a resilient fighter, taking all these shots and still managing to be a threat. I mean, the dude even managed to hold a charging Manticore summon, lift it up, and then kill it with one giant slam. Even without his guns, Ironwood is not one to take lightly, so again, it's good to see that the heroes are taking this seriously by keeping the attacks coming. Winter as well proves to be a remarkably useful ally with her glyphs, teaming up very well with Oscar to set it up for the patented Pine Poke Pummel Parade. But even this won't stop Ironwood, only doing enough to damage his aura. The final and definitely most stylish of blows coming from Winter instead, who dashes in and goes full anime, with a flashy, delayed reaction slash that looks all kinds of epic, and it is enough to put the big guy down at long last. Not sure exactly what this move was. The subs seem to imply that it was a lightning dust slash, or it could have been that charged up strike that Winter was going to do to Crow back in Volume 3. Either way, it looked flat out stunning with the lightning effects, and served as one hell of an explosive way to end this fight, which apparently has some folks ruffled over its quick runtime and Ironwood being beaten in convincing fashion. While I was certainly surprised at how quick this fight ended up, personally, I felt this was the best way to go about it, given the context and the parts at play. As I've already stressed enough, this was a fight that the heroes had to win as soon as possible, to assure nothing went wrong. Urgency was the name of the game, so naturally this would lead to a faster than usual fight in terms of their offense. Not to mention, with no guns, the element of surprise against him, and having to take on 5 highly skilled fighters, Ironwood had to lose relatively quickly, otherwise the fight drawing out too long would come off as very unrealistic and counterintuitive to the overarching narrative behind the action. Yes, we'd all love to watch long fights of kick-ass fighting and massive set pieces, but when the scene calls for this to be a methodical, coordinated effort to stop Ironwood ASAP, you have to structure the fight accordingly. And I feel the RWBY did just that, while still providing us with plenty of awesome sequences to still visually entertain us. And again, they give enough moments to Ironwood managing to still look tough and come close to overcoming the attacks to allow him some respect and get some dominance so it's not a complete wash. Anyway, as the heroes move on to Phase 2, we actually jump back a bit to see how this plan was first thought up, which can be a bit of a jarring direction, explaining things right after we've already seen the plan does work, but it does allow for those surprise elements with Emerald and Winter to land their mark better without the prior knowledge. And there are still key elements needed to be discussed in the setup that I would rather be touched on now rather than in the midst of the plan being sprung. So it's a direction that I think does work out in the end. When we last left off at the manor, RWBY and the others realize that they've tried and failed so much to think of ways to stop the staff being used, they haven't considered opening the vault and using it themselves. A risky but possibly beneficial change of direction that Ironwood wouldn't expect, and it could help solve their virus and evacuation problems. It's also here that we see Winter contacted Wise shortly after rescuing Marrow, her pout as well in this elevator scene being oddly charming, yet also depressing, as much like the later talk with Ironwood, Winter is now realizing that James has to be stopped, and she'll need help to do so, like her sister, her friends, or a pair of troublemaking prison escapees. I wonder if this is actually the first time that Winter's actually been happy to see Crow. With our heroes now coordinated, next comes the planning. Not just on how to get to the vault, but also how to evacuate everyone in Atlas and Mantle, as once they use the staff for a new creation, Atlas will no longer be a floating city, only keeping up in the air for a brief period of time thanks to its limited gravity dust. It's a striking change of tactics, but one that I think still fits in well with their primary focus over the course of the volume, pretty much ever since dividing from Ironwood. And if the only choice left is to let Atlas fall so the civilians will survive, then so be it. It'll be a massive sacrifice all the same to lose another kingdom, especially one as important as Atlas, but it speaks to everyone's willingness to protect humanity first and foremost, that they are willing to accept this for the greater good. However, Jean's suggestion to use the staff to create portals, teleporting the people to safety, isn't as easy as it sounds, considering you need detailed instructions to get your desired creation without flaws, and the heroes are gonna have to deal with the spirit within the staff. Awesome to get confirmation at last that Jin isn't the only relic spirit, this now implying that all of them have one, like I speculated in my relic beings theory from a while back. However, Ozpin describes the staff spirit as someone who's a bit of a character, which is an interesting detail for sure. Still, it's super exciting that we've gone from wondering if there are any other relic spirits to now possibly meeting one very soon. And as a side note, I also like that there are hurdles to jump through in using the staff's power perfectly, and it's not just a limitless means of creation, much like the 3 question cap on the lamp, and Jin being unable to answer questions about the future. It helps remove any instances where the viewer will be left thinking, well, why not they just ask about this, or why don't they just create that? To solve all their problems, maintaining future challenges without abusing the staff as a get out of jail free card scenario for every issue. Also, it's pleasing to see that Whitley lends a helpful hand once again by providing his evacuation plans as a possible reference aid. Good on the lad to keep himself moving forward and trying to do something of aid even as a non-combatant, and the small smile on Weiss's face is proper touching as well. A sweet unspoken thankful joy seeing her brother continuing to show that he is better than their father. So, while the fighting up top happens, we find out that Team RWBY and Penny are get into the vault via an entrance that I think many of us completely forgot about. The hole that Oscar left after being shot by Ironwood. Makes sense it's still open, with Ironwood being far too busy focusing on Salem's invasion to notice it, let alone get it fixed. So smart thinking on the part of Oscar to remember this, and on the writers as well, for sitting on this detail until the best time to address it with a purpose. By the way, love the design of the vault door itself. It fits in nicely with Atlas's more scientific aesthetic with the blocky portions and the blue lights, whereas Mistral had fans and orange glows that did fit well with that kingdom's artistic style. Nice touch, even if it does look like it's giving me the middle finger when it opens up. Of course, there's still the matter that once Penny opens the door, the termination program begins. So the others quickly hurry and activate the Relic's time freeze to keep her in stasis, though I will say there is a bit of a technical blip that I did notice when Team RWBY dashed through. The scene hangs on this shot long enough to notice that Penny is no longer there, and she's not being swept up in that RWBY tornado because she's back outside in the next shot, and again, she does need to be caught in the time freeze's area of effect for the stasis to work. It's not a major issue, but it is still something that I did notice thanks to the scene lasting long just enough for eagle-eyed viewers like myself to catch, and maybe it'll be fixed in the home release. Regardless, let's talk about this vault realm before we meet our new spirit. A beautifully serene open grassland that feels starkly out of place for the vault found in the snowy kingdom of Atlas. It made me think how Mistral's vault as well had a barren desert despite the kingdom that it was housed in being full of lush woodlands and lakes. So maybe all the vault realms will have this opposite look design-wise, as another sign that they are out-of-place mystical realms not bound to the land that they are housed in. As such, I wonder if Vacuo's vault has an icy tundra or a crystallized cavern, countering that kingdom's dust-barren sandy dunes. As for Vale, well, since it's viewed as the kingdom with the best natural defenses from all manner of harm, perhaps its vault could be a war-torn battlefield, the complete opposite of a safe haven, a land ripped to shreds by violence and disasters. Anyway, RWBY grabs the staff, and I guess it doesn't need a spoken name for it to be activated. Maybe you just need to have a need to create, kinda like the inverse of you needing the knowledge of Jin's name to seek her knowledge. Regardless, as the world freezes in time, we see Juniper and co working on phase 2, Winter putting Ironwood in jail, and poor Penny already dealing with the virus, which is just all kinds of sad, and it acts as a further sign that the heroes need this to work, or it's bye-bye Penny. As such, we and Team RWBY finally meet our newest Relic spirit, Ambrosius, the spirit of creation. And good God, Lord Almighty, this dude looks like 10 tons of prime blue beef. You'd think I would be prepared to meet another eye-catching body in blue after Jin, but hey, talk about making a striking first impression. Gotta say, I do love how they've incorporated the staff's features into his design, like Jin with her chains and hoops. Only this time you got the staff's jeweled tip wrapped around the guy's studly chest, and golden swirls bound around his legs like on the staff's pole. Not bad at all. Ambrosius, by the way, also seems to be based on the magical wizard of Arthurian lore, Merlin, as Ambrosius is his last name. A fitting inspiration to pull from for the spirit of a magical staff, and heck, even Merlin's origin stemmed from another Ambrosius, the Romano-British leader Ambrosius Aurelianus. And I wouldn't be shocked if that also played into why Ambrosius here has a physique worthy of a Roman strongman. That's more than befitting the early writing codename that the writers had for him, which, according to Eddie, was Merlin Daddy. Oh, and hands up, who thought the blue beefcake here was voiced by either Troy Baker or Matt Mercer, because I can't deny he certainly did sound like either of the two of them during my first listen. But nope, it's in fact British independent voice actor Valentine Stokes, also known online as Beautiful Val, who on top of other online productions is making his RT Productions return after voicing Portgas D. Ace in his death battle with Natsu, so that's pretty cool. And that means now we know his name, his inspiration, his appearance, and his voice. So, what is Ambrosius' personality that warrants Ozpin calling him a bit of a character? Well, despite his buff physique and frequent boasting of his artistry, he doesn't come off as smug, arrogant, or a dumb meathead. He still demands a commanding presence with his bravado, and is serious enough to warn the kids of the rules and risks to his powers. It just so happens he's also quite the showman, and that all-powerful mind of his is matched by a strong thirst and fascination for truly creative projects, as noted with him finding the idea of a floating city pedestrian, while being highly intrigued by something as unique as a synthetic being like Penny. If Jin was playfully enlightened, Ambrosius is confidently passionate. He honestly reminds me a lot of Leonardo da Vinci from his Assassin's Creed portrayals, only not as ripped. A creative genius that you'd figure may be egotistical or rude in his pride, yet he's actually quite carefree, only showing real energy when he finds something that excites him. And I absolutely love him. If his look wasn't already doing the job, the way he floats about like a nonchalant bodybuilder while switching from aloof to curious at the drop of a hat does a remarkable job at giving this guy a larger-than-life aura that's hard to not be entertained by. And Valentine does a stellar job as well in bringing his literal spirited nature to life, alongside the top-notch work on the guy's charismatic expressions. It's also thanks to Ambrosius as well that we can finally end one long-lasting theory about the Staff of Creation's powers that folks have kept thriving for a while now. The idea that it can basically be used to bring life back to the dead. The spirit nicks in that idea in the bud very quickly when he believes that's what the kids want him to do to bring back Penny when she dies. Personally, I never wanted to buy into that theory, since I've long said keep death as final as it can be, to respect the impact it has on the cast and story. Plus, I never saw logic in thinking the gods would allow one of the relics to bring people back from the dead when they made such a big deal about respecting life and death when dealing with Salem. So I'm glad that we got this swiftly addressed and wiped off the board, so it's no longer a prospect worth keeping stock in. But what is Team RWBY's request? Well, this is where things get a little tricky, so much so that a fair amount of fans have been left confused or misinformed in its execution, so bear with me as I try to break it down smoothly while sharing my own thoughts. First thing to keep in mind is there's 3 key details at play. 1. Ambrosius cannot destroy, only create. 2. You need to be very specific with your request, as Ambrosius will create what was asked of him to the exact detail of his user's wording. And finally, 3. The heroes can't just wish for Penny to have a virus-free copy of her original self, as the staff can only create one thing at a time. When you ask for something new to be made, the previous creation will cease to be. And considering these lot would like Penny to stick around long term without being replaced by the next creation, Team RWBY need to think of a way to bypass this rule if they want to use the staff to help solve their evacuation plans as well. So what we have is a very tricky conundrum that requires the perfect request to address all three details, and things only continue to get complicated when we hear RWBY's request. Create a new body for Penny using her existing robotic parts, which includes the virus. This will then leave the only thing about Penny that's not robotic: her soul, the actual part of Penny that makes her who she is. Her robotic parts are, like Yang exemplifies with her prosthetic, just a little bit extra on top of it. And since Ambrosius can't leave a soul without a body, as that would kill it, he has to do something with it, especially since RWBY's request doesn't involve any spoken directions on what she would like Ambrosius to do. In short, we got us a loophole abuse. This is how RWBY and company tried to get their actual desired creation, a body for Penny free from the virus and the one creation rule, by not making it actually the creation they use Ambrosius for, effectively making the Penny they want to become a fortunate byproduct of asking for something else that they can store the virus in, and be replaced with the next creation. If my explanation still leaves you confused, I'll leave a link in the description to a handy video from the awesome Kelsey that should help remove any further confusion. Now, how do I feel about this chain of events? Well, for one, I can admit that I did need another rewatch to truly understand things, and that can be to the detriment of the scene's enjoyment factor, but really, only on first watch. It's hard to make such a maze of a discussion be understandable and entertaining when you're too busy trying to process what's being explained at the first try. And the fact that RWBY is purposefully trying to not give all the details to bend some of the rules makes it that much harder to truly understand in the moment. However, after an additional watch, and with the understanding of RWBY's intentions to trick the system in mind, it does become much more enjoyable to watch. Everything explained makes sense within the rules, so it never comes off as them being broken or turned into a retcon. It's just a well thought out abuse of loopholes, which is the norm for these kind of monkey's paw-esque scenarios. Adding to the scene's charm is stuff like how RWBY cheekily convinces Ambrosius to get creative to solve the remaining soul problem, and the big guy's bewildered / nervous reactions keeps things entertaining on a visual front. Even if you're still thrown off by what's being discussed, just something about an almighty being like him acting like an eager kid ready to play, yet is still focused enough to realize this is a pretty dangerous and risky decision, is still oddly fun to watch in an, okay, this is funny, but also, yeah, can we be serious about this kind of way. Also, it was still super sweet to hear the girls talk about Penny so fondly, putting so much faith in who she is underneath all the metal that, even with the risks, they are still willing to trust in her and the plan working out. And it's still a very heartwarming scene, well performed by all the VAs to make it that much more sincere. Now, could the writers have found a way to execute the scene in an easier to digest format? Again, with RWBY purposefully having to not give all the details for the plan to work, it's hard to say. But at the very least, it didn't really take me that long to get the gist of it after about maybe 2 or 3 watches. Plus, the visual directing and the pure emotion amongst the cast did its well to carry the scene through all the word vomit. But that's all well and good. However, we still need to see if the plan works as hoped. So with no other option but to trust in Penny and Ambrosius' magic, the creation begins, in proper Disney transformation style. You know, magical wisps of energy, an enchanting melody in the background, and of course a blinding flash of light that vanishes to reveal 2 pennies. It actually worked! Penny has finally become a real girl. Or a normal meat person, if you want to pull a chibi quote. As for the created copy, well, that's currently dealing with the virus's termination, and with no soul to combat it, we get to watch the robot get destroyed in very uncomfortably dark fashion, with all the twitching, sparks flying, and the cold vacant look in its eyes that really drive home the fact that this terrifying sight could have been Penny's fate if the heroes failed. So, how do you best make sure that Penny is okay and is still her normal self? Well, obviously, we gotta see her hug someone. And yeah, it's about as tender a moment as you'd think, especially with Penny now learning just how warm a hug can be. It really is the most in-character way to show that, yes, Penny did survive the process and is still the same pure-hearted girl that we know and love. Plus, her leaping into the arms of everyone else to give them hugs is even more adorable. And in general, I am so happy to see Penny finally become what she's always wanted to be, a normal girl. For so long she's wanted to be just like any other human, but because she was a synthetic creation designed first and foremost to be a weapon, she's always faced roadblock after roadblock denying her this dream, even way back in Volume 1 when she wasn't allowed to be away from military support. She's faced the fear of her friends abandoning her once her true identity was revealed, as well as her initial destruction, having to focus on protecting Mantle, and then both Ironwood and the virus trying to control her actions regardless of her own will. Now the only one in control of her actions and her future is her, and knowing how much that means to Penny and to her struggle to get that freedom makes this all the more special. Still, there are some things about Penny still up in the air worth discussing, like the fact she's lost one of the ways she can get up in the air. She no longer has any of her tech to count on, like her rocket legs, finger gadgets, or floating array blades that's stored in her back. Granted, she could still use her maiden powers, which I believe are still there, for fighting and flying, but it will be interesting to find out if Penny will get new weapons so she doesn't have to count on just her magic. Also, does this open the door now for her to have a semblance? Or is her aura still a mixture of Pietro's and Freya's that makes this a non-possible thing? Maybe in the creation process the two auras got reformatted into a brand new single pool of aura all her own. If I did have to throw out an idea for a semblance if this is possible, maybe she can become the Puppet Master and create aura-infused strings to bring life to objects around her or even control other people. That would be an interesting spin after being so long the puppet. Though no matter what upgrade she gets, can we at least get this girl some shoes? How about some penny loafers? Okay, jokes aside, let's take a little detour to check in on the rest of the gang back in Atlas, as now that the new creation is made, the others need to get the warning out about the fall of Atlas. Except Jean's broadcast gets cut off at the worst possible moment, just after saying that Atlas is falling. Safe bet, this is what's up to no good again. But we don't see him, nor find out why he's knocked out all of the kingdom's local comms. To incite further panic? To delay the heroes' plans so they're forced to stick around? It's left as a lingering question with no real answer or any clues, so it's hard to really get a solid grasp of what to make about this scene other than just the general interest in what the others are up to. Winter's side of things though is very interesting, as when Jacques asks if she's gonna leave him behind to die in the fall, she confirms that he and Ironwood will be moved once everyone else is safe. But before Jacques can thank her for it, she makes it clear that it was Weiss's idea, whereas Winter likely was willing to let him die in the rubble. First off, props to Weiss for taking the mature route. Yes, Jacques is King Douche Canoe and may in fact deserve to die, but for him to truly pay for his actions, he does have to face justice. Secondly, while this may come off as rather cold from Winter, given that she's always been one to follow law and order, it is understandable when you remember that she was the first victim of Jacques' toxic parenting, the first child that he tried to manipulate and grew into becoming his perfect heir, whilst making life at home a living hell. In that sense, you can't really blame Winter for wanting to rid her hands of her abusive ass of a father for good. But at least while he looks to be spared, he'll have to live with the fact that he could have been left to die while others were saved because of how poorly he treated those around him. Another subtle but still powerful moment involving Winter in this episode that I absolutely love. Back in the vault, it's time to enact Phase 3. Create a way out of Atlas for the evacuees. Q-wise just going extra with the next summon, and Ambrosius is back, though less than pleased to see everyone again. I guess he just likes making such a big show and dance of his introductions that he feels a little bit blue about being in front of the same crowd again. But back on track, the gang first ask him to build multiple portals across the kingdom, and the destination on the other side being Vacuo. Holy snap, we might actually see Vacuo before the end of the volume. I mean, yeah, we saw a bit of it with that brief shot of Sun and Neptune during RWBY's broadcast early in the volume, but I'm talking about actually going to Vacuo, something that I and many of us didn't expect to happen, at least until the back end of volume 9. Not only would this be our first proper look at the Desert Kingdom, we could also meet all of our favourites that's currently stationed there, that's explored in the E.C. Myers books, like Team Coffee, Team Sun, the surviving tournament fighters, even our first animated look at Headmaster Theodore and Professor Rumpel. That sounds insane to think of possibly happening very soon, and I swear if I see Velva by the end of this volume, I am going to lose my shit. But much like the Penny plan, this request has some massive complications to it, as Ambrosius would need a lot more details that even the kids can't provide right now to create a safe process of so many people going through so many portals and all coming out through just one portal on the other end. So they need to think of a central point to act as a bridge so they can best traffic between the entrances and the exit. The answer? A realm just like this vault. A location that's not a part of Remnant where it's possible to create more than enough pathways to funnel people to the exit in a more manageable process. What's more, they also used the snowshoe shipping delivery tubes as the reference, the episode once again using a past location thought to be done with or forgotten about, coming back in a useful and ingenious new way. I love it when past elements get repurposed like this in creative ways. And sure enough, this seems to do the trick. With a bit of a hand-jiving thing going on, we now have ourselves our ticket to Vacuo, via a new realm full of portals and shining golden paths leading to one massive portal out, as well as a Atlas globe in the background for, style points. No clue where exactly in Vacuo it's going to lead out to, hopefully the capital city and not out in the uninhabited areas of the desert. But hey, it's better than sticking around here right now, and we do see some of the portals open up back across Atlas and Mantle, complete with a Cordovan shoutout, and Joanna being our first guinea pig to prove that it actually works. There's just one teeny tiny itty bitty little bitty problem though, as Ambrosius wraps up things by giving us one final warning. Do not fall. Well, gee, mister, thanks for showing us that you're aware of this risk after making the Shibuya crossing of Rainbow Roads. Seriously, was it that hard to make handlebars when you know it's a bad thing to take a tumble here? I guess tricky magical spirits just gotta be tricky. So, yeah, someone's gonna fall. You can't really throw that warning out without someone proving why it is a bad idea to do just that. And a lot of folks are now placing their bets on who they reckon is gonna be the fall guys. The most common picks seems to be everyone or at least someone from Team RWBY, since the opening itself does show the four girls diving deep into a very eerily similar black void, falling from a lone golden light. A lot of people especially think that Blake and or Yang will fall, as we've yet to see the scene that Aaron apparently screamed a lot in and got very emotional afterwards. Plus Barbara also commented recently that her favourite scene hasn't happened yet. So maybe we could see one of the two fall off and in a desperate act of self-sacrifice, the other dives in to save them, possibly even leading to the fabled confession between the two. There's also the danger, of course, that some civilians might fall off, and that the other romantic pair of Ren and Nora could be split apart too, should one of the others fall, making Nora's desire to focus on her self-worth on her own possibly become all the more realistic and tragic if she has no choice but to be alone. And we've also got a frontrunner for who could be responsible for causing people to take a tumble, outside of, maybe civilians getting a little bit antsy and rushing the crowd. That being Cinder, who could very likely try to fight RWBY and the others including a now weaker Penny if she sees this now the best time to get that power now she's human. We don't know as well where Neo or Watts are, which is very concerning. They must be up to something for them to not even be in the shot, especially with Watts messing around with the CCT earlier. But to what end? Well, we don't know, especially when Alice is about to fall. We also don't know where Pietro and Maria are and if they are getting a portal, or if they are seemingly stuck in the tundra and it means that they're outside of the range. So while things are getting wild in the pathways, we could see a race against time to rescue them and anyone else who's still stuck in Atlas before it crash lands. Since, we didn't see Crow, Robin, Marrow, the Aesops, of course Jacques and Ironwood are stuck in the jails, and who knows who's still stuck in Atlas that needs a rescue. And then there's the big question. What exactly will happen if you do fall? We're talking about maybe a death in an endless black void deal, or this could tie into past talk that Volume 9 will take a bit of a detour, and instead of that detour taking us to Vacuo, maybe if you fall, you end up in a completely different location, maybe even a different point of time. If so, maybe Volume 9's focus will be on the Fallen trying to get back to where they belong, while those who make it safely to Vacuo may be featured in the next E.C. Myers book. Both options definitely have their intriguing aspects, one side focusing on the unparalleled challenges with divided heroes and villains, and the other involving those left behind having to cope for now whilst also dealing with preparing for Salem's return, and the fact that they've just brought a load of Atlesians to the one kingdom with the biggest hate boner for the Northern Kingdom. Suffice to say, there's a lot of ways that this can go down, and as scary as it is to think about the consequences, I can't deny it's making for some thrilling speculation as well. Focusing on now though, rather than what's coming next, what a wild turn of events this was. A massive shift of expectations with all manner of twists and turns, but one that still filled with plenty of quality. The opening action, while on the short side, was a massive jolt of energy to kickstart the chapter in a high gear, and many of its visually stunning kinetic sequences more than made up for the rapid pace of it all, and most importantly, was wisely crafted with the context fueling the fight in mind, something that in the past has often been forgotten, leading to less than stellar fights. The real meat of the episode though is the events in the vault, where much of the episode's finest moments are found, as well as a majority of some of its bumps. As I said before, it is easy to get thrown off by all the convoluted steps, even with it making enough logical sense once you do find more time to analyze it. And for what it sets out to do, I do believe the writers nailed the execution to the best of their ability, even though in the moment it may come off as a bit too much to spiral with, because of all the moments going on and all the details that are left unsaid. Also, I think the episode could have done with some more scenes outside of the vault stuff to better balance the wider narrative, and not have the bulk of the episode be these giant portions in the vault with a small scenario slipped in the middle that really didn't have much worth. But beyond that, there's still more than enough positives in the vault, and beyond that was richly entertaining. From the gorgeous eye-catching visuals to the satisfying moment of Penny finally breaking free from the shackles to become who she wants to be, as well as the harrowing yet still exciting cliffhanger teasing some more feels to come. And of course, everything about Ambrosius, who, moving swiftly onto my episode awards, easily earns himself the Character of the Episode award. The big guy stole the scene in his grand debut with tons of flair, wonderment, and personality. Though shout out as well to Winter for dual moments of great subtlety in her reactions to Ironwood and Jacques, while also being a proper badass in the opening fight, which also gets my Scene of the Episode award. Yes, the vault stuff is where most people will remember this episode for, but I still wanted to give due praise to the effective surprises, excellent choreography, and how well the RWBY managed to build a short yet still post-pounding fight best suited to the circumstances leading up to it. And finally, the voice acting gold star goes to Valentine Stokes, who brought the big blue beefcake onto the scene with a performance that was just as engrossing to hear as it was fun to watch the guy in motion. So in the end, while I've come out of this chapter with a few more head-scratching moments than chapters past, it wasn't enough to overshadow another grand piece of what's becoming one of the most unpredictable volumes in RWBY's lifetime. And with the penultimate episode in sight, it's quite thrilling to think that we're still facing the unknown with plenty of time left for things to get even more insane. But if this episode is proving anything, it's that there's plenty of good that can come from the events we least expected. We just have to wait and see where the pieces, or the people, fall. But what about you guys? Did you see many of these twists coming? Were you content with how the opening fight turned out? Were you good with the twists and turns of the vault? And what do you think will happen in the Golden Crossroads? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe and bell buttons and tick the notification box to make sure you get every new video from me as they drop. And follow me on Twitter at ThatKaitoDan for more on anything to do with future reviews, updates on the channel, and more. But until next time, have a good day or good night, and peace out.